Okay, so welcome to Friday morning. Um, Welcome to the European Slate Development information session. Um, here we go. Now, so for those who don't know, I am Orla Clancy. I'm with the Creative Europe desk in Ireland, and over to my right, this way, is Jules
Um,
Chonchobhair. Um, Jules is the head of the office in Galway now. So yeah, so we'll be doing this together. And yeah, so I hope you have a strong coffee with you. This one isn't too bad now. This is a information session. Um, we're going to go through the general criteria, eligibility criteria, and then but there will be what we're going to do is we're not going to go into the detail of the actual application itself. So we're going to do a separate session. So stick it in your diaries that it's on November the 7th. The time I'll get back to you probably around 10 o'clock, but we'll send on an email to you all um just on that. Those sessions tend to run around 2 hours and we go through the actual every single tab, every single question, every single thing that you need to know how to do it because it's a bit of a the application process is a little bit, don't know how you call it, bit of a monster, a little bit challenging, maybe. So yeah, so this stuff, and it's a very handy way of doing it. So we're not going to go through all that stuff now, but so this one is really about your eligibility. Make sure that you're happy that you're eligible to apply and that you're happy to apply and you're able to take that deep breath and dive into the application. So okay, so we're going to start off. So just introduction, we're going to go through the objectives, eligibility criteria. Then we're going to pause the recording and have Q&A. And then we'll go through the assessment of proposals and how to apply and common errors. Just a few. We'll go into that a lot more detail during the technical session anyway. Because it really is only the people who are applying this time should really attend those courses because it's a lot of very minute information. Um, okay, so kick it off. A lot of you are probably familiar with this. So just to go into it in brief. So in Creative Europe, we have a content cluster. So we have a content cluster which covers mini slate, co-development, video games, and TV and online content, and also covers slate development. So the development is for increased capacity of producers to development projects with potential for wide circulation, foster competitiveness of European independent production companies and increase their economic weight on the market, support cooperation between production companies from different media countries, and then support the development of production of high quality European works with wide cross-border exploitation potential and strengthen the independence of producers in relation to broadcasters and digital platforms. This is actually a really important slide. If you get these, because if you acknowledge all of these bits in your application, like these are the objectives, these are the main areas about the content cluster. So all of these areas will have to be addressed in your application. So this is the way you need to be thinking. Okay. So, and to go through, so we have TV and online content, which is production. So anybody who's around, we're doing an information session on that at 12 o'clock today. And that's more for the production of TV programs. Then in the development side, we've got the video games and immersive content. We've got co-development, and then we've got slate and mini slate. For those who are asking, we are not, in Ireland, we are not eligible for mini slate. We wish we were to a point because the whole idea about mini slate is that you can apply with 2 to 3 projects and only need one project to be, as your track record project. So, but that is for the lower capacity countries. We are considered a high capacity countries. It's because we've always punched above our weight. So we're not. So if you see mini slate, just get that out of your head because we're not eligible for that. So the big thing about this is to reduce risk, invest in talent and creativity, and support growth. So the objectives, like I said, foster the competitiveness, to increase the capacity of audiovisual producers with potential to circulate throughout Europe and beyond, facilitate European and international co-production, and give a possibility also to emerging talents to direct a short film supported by experienced companies. And I know that objectives, if they can tend to sort of go in one ear and out the other, and you just want to put down the information on your project, but you really need to keep these in mind when you're doing your application, because that's what gets you ahead. So just to talk about the previous slate beneficiaries from 2021 to 25, bit of a mix. We've been doing pretty good. From 21, we had 3, then we had 6 and 22, we had 5 and 23, 5 and 24, and we only had 2 last year. And as you can see from the graph, from our very simple chart down here, that the applications exploded really in 2025, and that was part of the reason. The number of points that you needed to get funded last year was 86. So 86 out of 100, that's an A. That's an A plus in my world. It's like an A. So it was very difficult. Now, hopefully, they've done a couple of things that might bring those numbers down and make the hit rate a little bit better. But it just shows you how competitive it is and how competitive it's gotten. And the word is out, I think, with the Slate funding call. And I think with the number of other avenues that producers have to access funding for their projects, that's more and more focused on Slate. Okay. So for the Slate, we have 3 to 5 projects. Or Jules, you want to?
Yep. So you can have 3 to 5 projects, and on top of that, you can also have an optional short from emerging talent. It's open to all media countries. You do need to have produced 2 previous works since 2019. The overall budget for that one is 21 million, and the deadline is the 3rd of December 2025 at 4 p.m. Irish time. You'll see 5 o'clock's on a list on the calls generally, but it's actually, that's for Central European time. So bear in mind, it's 4 p.m. Irish time.
And just to say that the budget, one of the reasons why it might be a little bit easier to see, the budget has gone up 3 million. So it was 18 million last year, and it's gone up to 3 million, or gone up 3 million. So it's up to 21 million. So we're hoping that's going to have an impact with regards to the number of applications that can be funded.
And so eligible participants, you have to be independent, an independent audiovisual company, European, with recent experience in producing international distributed projects. Only applications by single applicants for Slate. And one thing that we're seeing changed in this one is it's only 1 application per development funding call. So that's Slate or co-development for us. Mini Slate as well, but we're not eligible for that. So you can only apply for Slate or co-development. So just bear that in mind. If any happen to be a video game company as well, again, that's also included in the development ones. And you can't be a beneficiary of a Slate funding grant for last year's call.
And I think that's one of the reasons why the numbers went so high in the last couple of years, because in 2024, they brought in, because it was always that way, that you could only apply for either one of Slate or co-development or video games. It was always like that. And then they decided to be a bit more generous, and they decided to open it up so you could apply for Slate and be a coordinator in co-development and be doing video games. So that led to an influx of a higher amount of applications as well. So they're pulling back on that one because they saw the impact that had, and it wasn't necessarily a good impact.
So hopefully that will help.
Yeah.
So yeah, the eligible participants so they must be independent, no majority controlled directly or indirectly by an audiovisual media service provider, either in shareholding or commercial terms. Majority control, that's more than 25% of share capital held by a single AVMS provider, 50% in case of several AVMS providers. Audiovisual production company, the company's main objective and activity is audiovisual production. For example, we've had people inquiring about doing projects maybe in an area that they're experts on, but they're not primarily an audiovisual production company. So in that case, they have to get one on board. So they must be European and established for Slate in one of the media countries. Mini Slate, as Orla mentioned earlier, one of the low capacity group A or B media countries, and owned directly or indirectly, wholly or by majority participation by nationals from media countries. So you have to be European national, essentially. And for publicly listed companies, the location of the stock exchange determines nationality. And
And
so,
then then we have the eligible participants here. So these are the countries, and it's not a very clear not necessarily very clear slide this, but it's all color coded. So as you can see, with the ones in black, they're the high capacity countries. So we're one of them. So there's not many of us. And then the group A and group B, they're the low capacity countries. So they're everything else. Okay. So as you can see that. So they really encourage that production companies from the higher capacity countries collaborate with the companies from the lower capacity countries to help build the industries in those countries. So that's the idea that we could bring our expertise over to there. So you collaborate, you can partner, you can co-produce. That's a big remit, especially in co-development, but also in Slate, they like to see that. So it could lead to an extra point or two, if they see that you're acknowledging this. And as you can see here, since the 22nd of September this year, Ukraine is now a full country now, like a fully participant country. So they're completely eligible for all of these calls as well, which is great. So the companies now, you have to have a track record that to be eligible for these. So you must show recent experience, and the way they gauge that is you have to have produced two previous works since 2019 that respect the following. So it can be an animation, fiction, or creative doc. It can be a one-off or series and of minimum 24 minutes. So the series, like if it's an animation, the series can be 24 minutes, um, or it could be a doc, but the 24 minutes is the limit. So you could have a short film, really you could be eligible as long as it's over 24 minutes. And with immersive projects, there's no minimum. You could have an immersive project as part of your slate. That's no problem. It shows innovation. But there's no minimum to that project. The big thing is that it has to have been actually released in cinema or broadcast on TV or made available on digital platforms in at least 3 countries other than your own before the deadline for submission. So this can be a tricky one. So you need to have 2 projects that have been produced and commercially distributed since 2019. And that means and in 3 countries outside of Ireland. So that could be theatrical, it could be broadcast, um, it could be on, one of the many platforms. That's fine, but you have to show and give proof that it has been broadcast in 3 different countries. So that is really important. And one question that we get a lot is that whether, they just finished a project, you have a distribution deal, will that be enough? Unfortunately not. No, it has to actually have been on screens for the public to see before the deadline. So just bear that in mind, because it's that can be a tricky one and it can trip people up. Um, the UK would be considered a separate country. BBC Northern Ireland considered one separate country, so that's fine. So just let you know that, but it has to be outside of Ireland. And then all releases have to be a commercial nature. So no screening during festivals, even if it's, you know, if it was a few showings of it during a festival or as part of an event, that's not eligible. It has to be um, a commercial release. And I think the reason why that they chose they need to see that the company is at a certain level, that the company has already dealt with distribution commercially across Europe. It's to be eligible to apply for this, because if you're not quite there yet, then you're not quite ready yet. And it's a good way of sort of, it's a good line really to show that. So maybe co-development might work better for you at this stage if you're not quite there, if you're not hitting that mark of the 2 projects across 3 separate countries. So the one thing about the recent experience is that the company must be, there's a few ways around it. There's always ways around it. The company can be the sole production company of that previous work, which is, very straightforward. In case of a co-production, they have to be the major co-producer in the financing plan, though. So it will be about how much, of the financing you brought to the table. I mean, that's how they check that you're the major co-producer. Um, or you could be a delegate producer, which is basically majority co-producer. It's more used in France. Um, or if your company doesn't have that, then you can use a personal on-screen credit as a producer or a delegate producer, but only the CEO or managing director or shareholder of a company can have that credit. So, and it can't be an exec producer, it can't be a line producer, it can't be anything else other than producer. Even series producer can be tricky. But if you have that producer credit, then you'd be eligible. So if you don't, what we've seen happen in the past is that, companies that don't quite have that, so they bring on a shareholder um, with that credit. They don't have to be on board very long, as long as it's legit in the CRO. Um, that is fine. But just make sure that you have this, and you never know, you might think, oh, I don't have that, but I was a producer on a project back in the day, back in 2020 or whatever. So just really check this, because there's no point in going through the whole application and then realizing that, we only have two countries that we were distributed in, and because it's a lot of work um, to go through if you're not eligible. So definitely check with the eligibility first before you get stuck into it. And come to myself and Jules, that's why we're here. If you're not sure about it, or if a particular project was eligible, so just make sure that you come to us, and then we can bring you through it. So the previous work must be detailed in the media database, right? So the media database is part of the application. Like, you'll click into the media database, so I'll show you briefly what it is. Now, what people have done in the past, that they have gone and they've Googled media database. There is a separate Creative Europe media database, just to confuse matters. And they go in separately, and they register their project there, or they think it's already there, because I had a project that's distributed, a couple of years ago, and it's already in there because our distributor, registered it. But that this is a completely separate thing. It's called the same, but it's completely separate. So you have to go into it via the application and put in all the details there. And then and if you applied last year and didn't get it, but you're like, we put all our information in there, so it should be there. It's like, no, you have to put it in for every application. You need to put that specific information in that media database. If the previous work is ineligible, your application is ineligible. Okay. So we have seen many heartbreaking things, such as, they put the wrong date in. They, even though or they put the wrong project in, or they thought that, they, they actually put the title of the wrong project in, but it was actually the other project that had the three countries and was eligible, and this project wasn't. It's going to be gone. They don't have the time to come back and check. It's going to be considered ineligible. So please double check and make sure that you have this and that it is eligible. And then that the information in the media database must be correct, and proof must be available upon request. They don't, like, you would put in like what countries they're in, what country, like for example, we put in the countries that the project was commercially distributed in, but they won't ask you for the contracts. They won't ask you for the stuff there and then. If they, on their side, if they can't find their own proof, or they can't find their own proof, they will come back and ask you. So you don't need to include any proof at that stage, but make sure that what you say there, that it was, just it was shown on BBC on the 2nd of February 2021, and that you have proof of that. So just bear that in mind. Get your proof, put it away in safe, and so it's there handy to get it. It's little things like this which will trick you up. Trick you up. Jules, do you want
Yeah.
to take over there?
So for eligible activities, it's for the development of between 3 and 5 eligible works, including animation, creative documentary, fiction projects, either one-off or series for commercial exploitation. Sorry, my screen has been covered. It's primarily intended for animation, doc, and fiction. Cinema, it must be a minimum of 60 minutes. TV and digital platform, a minimum of 24 minutes for animation, 50 for docs, and 90 for fiction. And interactive and non-linear projects, there's no minimum. It's for a series with a joint distribution and marketing strategy have to be submitted as series. And then the first day of principal photography, it must be a minimum of 10 months after the deadline. So that's the deadline for application.
Yeah, and this is one of those things that you have to make sure it's 10 months, and you can't put in a mistake going, oh, we're starting shooting in June, but then you're ineligible. So you just make sure that that 10 months is in there. It's for development. The contracting, and this takes so long, like you're talking around 6 months before you actually find out whether you got it or not. And then there might be a couple of months, it's usually a couple of months for the contracting phase. So they want you to contract with them before you actually start shooting. So that's why it's given the 10 months. And there's no getting around that. If you have a project that, if you're thinking about putting in 3 projects and one project is nearly ready to go, but we're going to put the 10 months in, but it might shoot in August or it might shoot in July, just be very, very careful, because if you start shooting in July and you go back to, and you get the slate and you go back to them with the contract and go, actually, we've started shooting this, and we would like to swap out for another project. They don't take that very lightly. They don't like it, because they feel like they've been played. And so just be extra, extra careful on that, because particularly if you have 3 projects and one becomes ineligible, your entire slate goes. Your entire slate is ineligible because the slate is for 3 to 5 projects. Whereas if you have 4 projects in, one of them can become ineligible, okay? But so like the funding for that is taken out, but the rest of your slate is still eligible because you still have 3 projects on board. So just be careful. Like with the slate, you have to be careful that you have to make sure that there's enough development in there so the evaluator can really get a sense of the projects and to know what it's going to be about. So a good bit of a development already has to have been done, but just make sure that you're not plan to go into production in March. It's very hard to fudge that in an application as well. The 5 eligible works you could put in for 5. It's a lot. It's just be careful that that you're putting in, you've got 4 solid ones, and then you're looking on the shelf and it's like, oh, that one. Okay, and you stick that one in. Just be careful, because it could actually dilute the points for the rest of them. So you need the projects that you put in need to be strong. They can be at different stages. They should really be at different stages, but not too early, because you need to be able to give the evaluator a really good sense of the projects for them to be able to evaluate it. So again, the choice of the projects and the number of the projects is what you really need to be thinking about now. And the choice of the projects as well, but we'll go through that afterwards. So the other thing that they've added in, well, it's been there for a while, is an optional piece. It's development and production of a short film. So it can be max 20 minutes, it can be one-off or a series. So no previews or pilots or trailers. And it's all about the director. So the director must be the emerging talent, not the writer, not the producer. You can definitely show that, in your application, say that you support emerging talent, writers or other areas as well. But for this, to get that funding for this short film, it has to be a director. So the first day of principal photography is after the deadline. If ineligible, the application remains eligible. So this is really an incentive to help emerging talent. It's not really that important to them, you know, they don't you don't have to talk about the strategies for the short film. Um, they don't need to know. So this is really an incentive for you to really look at emerging talent and to bring emerging talent into your company. Now the amount of money isn't a lot, but used to be, but costs have gone up and funding for this hasn't gone up. So but we'll go through that again. So the other thing is that the applicant company must own the majority of the rights to all the projects. Through a signed contract. Now, these you have to include. In case of a European co-production, an equal sharing of rights is allowed, so it's allowed 50-50. But you still have to have the right, you have to show the contract that you provide has to show that both companies have the rights. If it is, say, an Irish UK co-production or contract, you have to have 51%. Right. So European companies have to have that majority. The duration of, and yeah, so if you've any questions on that, there's usually a lot of back and forth regarding the contracts and what's eligible and what's not. So yeah, so you can get in touch with us about that if you're not sure. The duration, it's normally not more than 36 months. There are extensions can be possible, if justifications allows it and requested during through an amendment. The extension is usually only max 6 months. You wouldn't really get more than that, and you have to give them enough notice. But have that 36 months in mind to get all the development done, and then started the action. You have a choice. You can start it after the signature of the grant agreement, which you're talking probably 7-8 months realistically away. You can start the development there. Most people don't do that. Most people say go with the second option, which is retroactivity to the date of submission with justification of an approval, right? So you can say that I want all my costs to start the day that I submit the application. And you can do that. You can put that in. They will come, if you're lucky enough and you get it, they will come and they will ask you, okay, well, why do you want to start then? Why should we give you the money? That's retroactive. So so just make sure, so they will ask, but with development, it's very easy to justify that because it's development and it's a continuous, and it's availability of the writers, and it's you can't stall development, right? So it's an easy one to justify, but that's what that means there. Usually in EU programs, they don't like retroactivity at all. So with this, they occasionally certain programs and certain funding calls get exceptions, and this is one of them. So yeah, so that's where this is, just in case you're wondering. Jules, sorry, I'm talking a lot.
So ineligible projects include live recordings, TV, games, talk shows, cooking shows, magazines, TV shows, reality shows, educational, teaching, and how-to programs. Documentaries promoting tourism, making of reports, animal reportages, news programs, and docu-soaps. Any project including pornographic or racist materials or anything advocating violence throughout all calls is always ineligible. Works of a promotional nature, institutional productions to promote a specific organization or its activities, music videos and music clips, video games, ebooks and interactive books, student films, and graduation works. So those are all ineligible for this. And the lump sums per project depend on the genre, type, and for fiction size of the projects. The maximum EU grant is the sum of lump sums that apply to the individual projects in the application. So, for example, for an estimated for a one-off animation project with an estimated budget of sorry, I was finding it difficult to read that.
I know.
Yeah,
it's not very user friendly. Yeah.
No, that was me.
Yeah, we're fessing up, like these are pretty much very similar to the Brussels.
I tripped myself up on the old maths symbols there for a second.
I know. Yeah, exactly.
Less than or equal to 5 million.
This for the one-off, it's okay, so one-off for animation is 55,000 you can get, and doc is 30,000. It doesn't matter what your budget is, right? This is a one-off. This is what you're applying for, and that's it. There's no separate budget that you have to go through. This is the amount you go for, and that's it. No more, no less. The way that these wonderful math symbols come in is when it comes to fiction, right? So for
Yeah.
a one-off, if the production budget is below or equal to 5 million, you can apply for 45,000. If it's above 5 million, then you can apply for 60. And it's the same with series. It's a one number for animation and one for doc. But oh, sorry. Sorry. Um, and but then when it comes to series, then because of fiction, because of TV drama, if it's under 5 million, you get 55,000. If it's between 5 and 20, you get 75,000. If it's over 20 million, you can apply for 100,000. So again, if there's something on the border of 5 million, and you're like, oh, we could apply for a bit more. Just be careful because it's going to be, you are going to have to justify all your strategies are going to be in. And if they feel that, well, actually, this is under 5 um, million where it should be, then, you really have to show that you know what you're doing. And then it's going to be down to the experts really to really evaluate that. And then
So
the short film is 10,000. See, it's not a lot. And when they brought this in a number of years ago, it was efficient. But I know that now it's not a lot. So for a short film, but that is it. And again, like I said, it's just an incentive. If you have other funding that you can bring in for it, great. But it is an incentive just to show the innovative nature of the company. And one of the ways you can be innovative, wink wink, is showing that you support emerging talent. Okay.
And just in terms of the grant being the sum of the lump sums might be obvious there. The maximum is 510. So for example, if you're in the higher category in the series, and you had 5 projects, that'd be 500,000 for those, and a short at 10. So you just add up the sum of each of the projects that you might have and their
Yeah.
estimated production budgets.
And I think that the another thing to be aware of is that you can't say that your total development budget is going to be, say for doc, your total development budget is going to be 30,000. It can't. They can't support all of the funding
Yes.
for the project. So it's generally once you hit around, just say the 30,000, once the 30,000 is around 70%, I think 70 is a good mark. So you will show where the other 30% for the development is going to come from. Okay, it could be from Screen Ireland, it could be from um your own company, it could be, other ways, but they just can't justify, they can't fund the entire thing. So you have to show where else the funding is going to come from. Okay, so we have a Q&A. That is supposed to say Q&A. Oh, there it is. So I'm going to pause this now and we can go through the chat. Hang on. Nope.
I've got them here. I can call out.
I can pause. Okay, pause recording. Thank you, Jules. Okay. So how are the proposals assessed? This is just the 6 month um road that you're starting. So it's the admissibility criteria that you get all the submission requirements right, that you ticked all the boxes and you're eligible. Then it goes for the eligibility criteria. It goes for the financial and operational capacity and exclusion, expertise and solvency in situations of exclusion, right? Bankruptcy, if you've been bankrupt, it's a no-no. And then the award criteria is the evaluation of the quality of the proposal. So they go through these certain areas first, and then they get sent to the evaluators, and they get sent to 2 evaluators across Europe in 2 different countries outside of Ireland, right? So just in case there's no conflict of interest. And so that's how they're assessed, and that's why it takes so long. So they go to 2 separate evaluators. Those evaluators get a certain amount of applications. They go through them, and it takes a couple of months. then they all come back and the evaluators come back together. And, if those projects are, if one gives them 80 and one gives them 40, then they have to come together and there's evaluation committee. So there's an awful lot that goes into it. So that's why it takes the time. It takes the time, but one of the nice things is that even if you don't get it, that you get a really detailed feedback at the end. And so you can see, they try to be as transparent as possible. So you can see exactly why you didn't get it or did get it if it works. So the eligibility of the previous work and the European ownership and independence will only be checked at gap stage. Now, what's the gap? The gap is the grant agreement preparation. So this is after the evaluation. You've got an email going, yep, you will be invited to join the gap, which means that you've got funding. And then you go to the contracting stage then. But the eligibility of the previous works and the ownership is only going to be checked then. It used to be a case where, if you're ineligible, you find out after 2 weeks and then that's it, and then you can move on. Not anymore. So, we've seen heartbreaking situations where, companies waiting for 6 months and they're working on the projects and they're thinking in the back of the head, well, if we got Creative Europe, we can do this. And then they get that email saying, no, you're ineligible, which means that the project didn't even get to the evaluators, which means they didn't even get feedback. So you go through all that and you don't even get the feedback at the end. So just make sure that the ownership and independence of the company is right. You might have somebody from the UK working as a shareholder in your company, but they've been living here for 20 years, but still UK. Okay, so it's not residency, it's nationality. So just be careful of that. And after Brexit happened, that tripped some people up. Um, and the eligibility of the previous work as well, just be extra careful with that. They can come back looking for information and then they go, yes, here, but they don't tell you straight away if you're eligible or not, and you have to wait 6 months. So just make sure that that's correct. So the idea of this is that it's a reduction of the workload. So then there's no back and forth at the beginning, because there used to be an awful lot of back and forth at the beginning. It slows everything down. So it's speeding up selection, and with the number of applications going through the roof, it's still, you're talking 5, 6 months to get that. So that's why. And there's some application enter gap might be declared ineligible. That's what we're just saying. And then no check will be done on applications not reaching. So the may come back next call and only find out. Oh yeah, okay, that's true. So there is no check done. So the funding threshold, which we'll talk, do you know what? I'm going to talk about this later because we need to talk about the threshold anyway. The criteria are very strict. So just make sure that that you cover everything before you make the application. The award structure, there's your threshold there. Okay, so we'll talk about the threshold first before we go into the award criteria. It's out of 100 points. They talk about threshold here. It's actually quality threshold of 70 points. So if you got 65 points, even if there was enough budget left over, you wouldn't get the funding because there's a quality that you need to hit. It doesn't mean that if I get 70 points, I'm in, I'm funded. No, because like we said, for this year or for 2025, you had to get 86 points because the competition was so high and there were so many applications. So that's how it's judged. So what they're talking about here, back here, is that if you don't get that funding threshold, there'll be no check on the eligibility side of it anyway. So you could come back and apply again next year and only then find out that you're ineligible. So just because you didn't get it and you got the feedback and stuff this year, they didn't check the company eligibility. So just be extra careful that, if you applied last year and you didn't get it, double check your company eligibility and make sure that the nationalities are over 50% European or from the Creative Europe participating countries. Now, all of these criteria are in the call document. So you have to keep all elements in mind when preparing your application. Jules, do you want to go through this?
So the general structure, there's and these are all, as I said, just more detailed in this, but in the call document. But so the relevance, that's 35 points. The quality of the content and activity is 30 points. The overall project management is 20 points, and dissemination is 15. But do have a look around, and when you're doing your application, you'll want to keep those with you. So we're going to go into the full breakdown of each of those ones, but you want to keep that next to you when you're doing your actual application. Always keep that with you and refer back to it. So looking at the relevance and the breakdown there. So relevance and added value of the proposed slate to improve the company's position on the European and international market is 15 points, and that's in relation to its co-production approach, partnership with players from different countries, including from countries with different production capacity. Visibility at major festivals and physical and online markets, capacity to increase the company's turnover, and capacity to increase the number, ambition, or size of projects in development. And so the ability of the company to adapt, there's 10 points for the ability of the company to adapt to a competitive and changing audiovisual landscape by being innovative in its activities in terms of genres, formats, and platforms, emerging talents, or new territories. And 5 points, adequacy of the strategies presented to ensure a more sustainable and environmentally respectful industry. And 5 points to ensure gender balance, inclusion, diversity, and representativeness. And it's really important to note for those two, it might seem that they're quite easy to get, but they're looking a bit more than just, oh, there's more females or things like that when they're looking for balance and for inclusion and diversity. And if you're all female, actually, you're kind of going the opposite direction, and they are talking about actual balance. And they want to see about, when you're saying about you're bringing in more balance and more diversity, how are you making that more sustainable environment for those people to work on, to work in? So just because you have people included doesn't mean you've made it a good environment for them to work in. So they want a bit more there. And the same in terms of sustainability and environmentally, they really want to see the big overall plan of how you're doing that. And it goes beyond, kind of, we're recycling and we're putting bottles in, or reusable cups. They want to see
just on that. Sorry, I think I went too fast with that. And the relevance is 35 points, and it's a lot. And the 15 points here and the 10 points here, so those 25 points really is about the company and about how the projects you pick are going to help grow your company. I would print that out and stick it up on the wall, because which projects you pick, they have to grow the company. That's what they want to see. So in your company presentation, you can't just say, like we said before, you can't just say that, we're very happy the way we are. We just need more money again to do it, because the broadcasters that we usually worked with don't have that money anymore. So that doesn't work. Okay, not for Creative Europe. They want to see that you're doing something different, that you're doing something that, that you understand that the industry is changing, that you understand that it's to be sustainable, that you have to do something different, that you have to be ahead of the curve, that you're aware of the trends of the market, and that you've spotted a gap, or you've spotted something that you want to go into that direction. So in the application, there is a company presentation. So in the company presentation, you are going to talk about the company, and you're going to talk about who you are, where you've been, and how you want the company to grow. And then you pick projects that relate directly to how you want the company to grow. I think it's probably the easiest way to do it. It's the clearest way to do it. It makes most sense. So if you say that, well, actually, we've done film for the last number of years, we want to go into TV drama, like a lot of companies. Maybe not anymore. But so if, for example, if you're doing that, or do it the way around, then you're putting in a TV drama. Okay, but you don't have enough experience really in that. So you're bringing in an exec, a really talented, experienced TV drama exec, or you're co-producing with a company in in Spain or Italy or wherever, who have very, very, or Finland or the Nordics, that have very strong experience in that, because that's how you want to learn and grow and to be to accomplish that genre. Okay. But that shows your weaknesses. It shows that you're aware of them, and it shows that you're willing to learn, and this is how you're going to go. So and we'll talk about innovative there as well. So it really they want to see, it could be in terms of genre, it could be, what platforms you go for, it could be budget size, it could be how it's going to help increase your turnover. Like it could be about the type, even into the type of cast you're using, or the emerging talent, or they can't all be emerging talents. Maybe you've got one project because it's really important to your company's ethos that you help emerging talent, right? So it's like it's one company or one project, you've got an emerging director, you've got emerging talent or writer or whatever, but then you've also, because you want to bring them with you, and then you got another project who have been with you for years, and so and you've built you're concreting those or cementing those relationships, and because that makes sense for your company. As long as it makes sense for your company, it doesn't have to, be innovative. Well, this is what everybody's doing, but has to make sense for your company. Is the big thing, because it really is. You have to know who your company is. You have to know who you are. You have to know where you're going, because then it's so much easier to put it down on paper. And so that's a huge thing about Slate. It's about companies. So just don't pick projects just because, well, we've got a European co-producer on that one. And we got, you really have to think about what projects that you pick. And I think that's what helps when you come to us with like, look, we've got 7 projects and they all look good to us, but we're in the thick of it and we can't think of of which ones to pick, like help us, right? So come to us with that. If you're applying, let us know about the projects, because we might see something that was like, well, actually, this will work better because you've got a gap in this area and this fills that, so that's really important. And I think that's probably the most important thing with Slate, because once you have those figured out, everything else slots into place and it makes sense for everything else. And one, like when you go through this says 15 points here, right? There are 5 tick marks. There are 5 different things here. So pretty much it's 3 points for each. So if you don't talk about your visibility, if you don't have a festival strategy, even for TV drama, if you don't have a festival strategy, you're going down, because they look at every single word in the award criteria. There are points given to every single word in the award criteria. So just be careful with that you deal with everything. Think of it as the leaving cert, answer the question, break it down. So your first one is co-production approach, right? Next heading is partnership with players, right? Deal with every single one, because that's how you will deal with it, and that's how the picture comes together. And the evaluator want to give you points, but if you don't mention it, they can't give you points, and they're looking through the application and they can't, give you points. And if it's not clear to them, if you annoy them by having by your application being all over the place, it's going to be very hard for them to really push for you. Okay. Um, yeah, there's partnership with players in different countries, including countries in different production capacity. That's the LCCs. And, you know, don't just talk about US and Australia and the UK. If you have strong relationships with them, and yes, like it is talking about going international beyond Europe, but maybe leave that as one project, as long as it has a strong, some strong European element. Um, because if you're looking at, your focus is the diaspora, yeah, it's like that doesn't work. That's not being a pan-European project is about. It's like, well, we've got Irish people over there, and that's who we're targeting. It's like, this isn't a call for you then. Okay. If you have one project that you could it's for them as well as European, then it works. But it has to be a balance. Okay. It's Creative Europe, it's European. So okay. And then yeah, so this is the ability of the company to adapt to a competitive and changing landscape, being innovative in its activities, in terms of emerging talent or new territories. If there's a country that you haven't, explored, and you really want to work with them because you know the market in that area and you really want to go there. What co-producers are you looking at? What do you know about the market? Why does it make sense for your company? Okay, it has to make sense for your company. They have to, what's innovative for your company, right? But obviously, once you're market aware, then then that will help. But it's your company is the key one here. And yeah, and so then there's the next two strategies. Then they're sorry, like Jules was saying, and these are in every call. So it's 5 points for each, and 5 points, it might feel like very little, and that you can just stick it in ChatGPT, and it's like, give me a strategy for a more sustainable and environmentally respectful industry, and stick that in there. That's not going to work. It's not going to work. It has to be project specific. They have to see, yeah, but we'll talk about that later. But it has to be project specific. Can't just be a general, yeah, strategy lifted from a website. It has to make sense for your company and it has to make sense for the projects. Sorry, Jules, I'm talking far too much.
So quality of content and quality of content and activity. So the quality and creative potential of the works in the slate, that's 15 points. And those go for strength and distinctiveness of idea, subject matter, project focus, and dramatic potential. The quality of the writing, narrative choices, character development, and the world of the story, and the creative potential quality of the visual approach and artwork. And again, like, you just want to be very, very clear on all of these. It's the same for all of the word criteria. Just be very, very clear, have this next to you and delve into them and just really have a think about what these mean for your projects, and make sure you're answering that throughout your application. Potential to reach audiences at a European and international level is 15 points. The transnational appeal, including for online audience of the concept and subject of the works, potential of the works to cross borders, taking into account the creative team, the intended cast, or the international ambition with regard to the cast, the collaboration strategy with non-national partners. So anything that you have really that really crosses borders or can take that international appeal into consideration, really strengthen your argument there and really work on that, because there's a huge number of points there for that. And then for project management, the adequacy of the development strategy, of the development plan, schedule and development budget to the needs of each work. The adequacy of the financing strategy. So each of those have 10 points. For the financing strategy, we're looking at the adequacy of the production costs of each work and to its development budget. Adequacy of the financing strategy compared to the estimated production costs in terms of awareness of the suitable potential financial partners and territories targeted, in terms of diversity of sources of funding foreseen. So they really want to know that you're aware of your overall financing strategy, what it's going to be like later, and how the development of that correlates to the production later on. And just that you understand that.
And I think yeah, and sorry, again, I went on too fast. Sorry. The again, it's every word that you need to deal with. The potential of the works across borders, taking into account the creative team, intended cast, or the international ambition with regard to the cast. Cast has become more and more important. And we can see that in terms of the evaluations that come in. We don't get the evaluations, by the way, from we don't even find out who gets funded until after everybody's told. So, I mean, producers send us their evaluations if they want. And we can see that cast is mentioned more and more. So really think about the cast and how it's going to help your projects travel. Same with the creative team. It's collaboration with non-national partners. It is about, your distributors, your sales agents, your co-producers, how that's going to end up, how that's going to grow. The project, but also don't just like if you are co-producing with, if you're planning to co-produce with Germany, keeps popping into me now for some reason, don't just rely on Germany as well. We've got we're talking the distributors there and sales agents there, and it's like that's our plan. It's like, oh, the evaluator would go with you. Well, what about the rest of Europe? So don't just rely on that one country. For you to look further afield. Have a more, it's a pan-European. So yes, your co-producer could be from there, but what are you going to do in Southern Europe, or up in the Nordics? Like, what's your plan to get your project out there? So so definitely talk about it there. The Yeah. Okay, I'm with when it comes to the strategies, they look for the schedule. So there's certain things here that you need. So you will give a month by month schedule. You will give our quarterly. I think it's better month by month though per project, because the easier it is for the evaluator to read, the easier it is for them to give you points. You have to put in a development budget. It's not an Excel, it's in the box in the application. And you talk about the development budget there. And with the finance and strategy, you talk about how you're going to get they look for the how you're going to help fund the development as well as media. So bear that in mind. And then with the finance and strategy, the production costs of every work. So yes, to the development budget. So they might look at it and go, actually, they're way low on their development budget because this project that they're trying to do is way bigger than this. So just be careful on that, or it could be the other way around. And then they like plan A's and plan B's with their strategies. So, or with their financing plans. So yes, this is your ideal one. And if that doesn't work out, we're going to go with this. They want you to be, another one stick up on the wall is ambitious but realistic. Start printing these out on mugs. So be ambitious but realistic. That's the way they want you to look at. And that just shows, again, the awareness. Okay, trying to think if there's anything else with that. And then yes, in terms of the diverse of sources of funding foreseen, they and the innovative, they don't want, it's like, yes, we know that there is a tried and tested, you go to Screen Ireland and you're going to apply for Section 481 and there's commission demand there, and then you're going to go with the tax credit in Belgium, or with your Belgium co-producer and your broadcaster, and it's like, that's fair enough. It's like, yeah, but is there anything else? Are you talking to anybody else that they're looking for innovation, they're looking for their new ways that people are talking about. So if there is something that you're, a way of financing that you're thinking about, but it doesn't really sound, put it in. It's like they are looking, like this is changing all the time. They're, if there's private investments, if there's angel investments, whatever it is, talk about it. And that, because if this is your strategy, put it in. They're not looking for your bog standard strategy. They're looking for something a bit different, something that can help make you sustainable. The public funding is very vulnerable in a lot of countries. So, so it's so just be careful on that you don't just if it's strong and you have your partners and you have you've done it before and it looks good and it works well, fair enough. But if there's anything extra, you can add extra point or two in there.
And then finally, dissemination is 15 points. The marketing strategy allowing to reach audiences at an early stage. This includes the definition of USP, target audiences and markets, innovative marketing and audience engagement tools, promotional activities, 5 points. Relevance of the European and international distribution strategy regarding the identified target audience, distribution methods foreseen, distribution partners in place or envisaged, awareness of the markets, European international vision, relevance of choice of territories, and all that is 10 points. And again, they really, really want to see that you have good understanding of the markets. We have had where people have broken down and they've still gotten feedback. where they just felt they weren't quite strong enough on their markets, and they didn't understand them fully and didn't have a good distribution plan in place. So really, really think about those and build up those plans and know where they're going, who they're going to, and show that understanding of it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's that understanding, like you say, Jules, that they really need to see. So if there's other projects that you look at, you know, well, actually our project's very similar to that, do some research, you know, well, what did they do and how did they get on? Or if there's certain countries that, well, actually this is doing really well over there. Do a bit of research into your projects and into the distribution and where you think it will work. Where's your audience? Comes down to that. And also the marketing strategy, it's only 5 points, but it's an important one. And this isn't about the actual marketing. You know, you might be thinking, well, we give it to the sales agents and they deal with that. It's like, yeah, but that's not quite the marketing that they're talking about. They're talking about how to reach audiences at an early stage, how to get them involved earlier. Um, you know, what's your, are you doing a campaign to get them involved? Like, is the cast, I mean, what is it? What's going to make your project different? What is going to you know, really hook them at an early stage to want to see what if what you're doing on that. If you're not, fair enough, but you will lose the points. And also what you can put in here, it's so it's not just about B2C, it's about B2B, it's about business to business. It's how are you going to market this to your potential financiers at, you know, at Cannes or Berlin or Series Mania or wherever it is. What are you going to put together to show to them um to get them on board? So it's yeah, it's all about that. And yeah, it goes back to what Jules says. It's all about it's the awareness of the markets. You need to show that they, you know, that you know what you're talking about and that their money is in safe hands. And that, you know, and that so yeah, that's what it's all about, really.
Yeah.
So they are the award criteria. And like we said before, you have to do it every single word. So you break it all down and do that. So it's a lot of work. This application is a lot of work, and that's why we're doing this now. You have, I want to say 6 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, 5.5 to apply. But you need to start now because this is, and you know, it can be off-putting. You know, there's so many applications now, and it's like the hit rate isn't great, and it's really looking for really high points. But by going through this process, you put a business plan on your projects. You actually start to focus better. So even if you don't get the funding, at least it's putting you on the right track. And the work that you put into this, I know you're all looking at me now and shaking your head, going, "Oh, yeah, we have to go through all this, just what?" But it's, you know, it's putting that focus on that plan. So you can go to other funders or you can actually go, actually, that sales agent would really work for this. So even aside, if I don't get this, you can go on that path. It's really about thinking very strongly about the projects and so there is it's, you know, there is a reward to the pain of the application, even if you don't get the funding. Okay. So how to apply. We're going to go through this briefly. Like I said, in 2 weeks' time, and we will send you an email on to register to the technical session because we will go through this in minute detail. So the application consists of part A, it's all the administrative information and the duration and the grant you want and who you are and the address of the company and all of that, right? So that goes straight on the portal. The part B is the Word document that you will be using for this is going to be your main application. This is what you're going to put all your strategies and everything. That's where you're going to answer all your questions. And work packages, you don't need to know what they are now. They're very straightforward, actually. And deliverables, very straightforward, and we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. And then the part C is it's KPI, it's statistics. It can be done in literally 2 minutes. So they're the three parts, but then there's seven mandatory annexes, okay, to be downloaded together with the Part B. And they are it. So there's the lump sum calculator, which is a mandatory template. So you'll get that. That is an Excel with you literally, well, I'm doing a documentary, so 30 grand comes up there, and I'm doing an animation, 60 grand comes up there, and it all adds up. And that bottom total is what you're going to be applying for. It's an Excel, you put it in. Again, 3 minutes. The creative dossier projects submitted for funding, right? So it's a mandatory template. It's an it's a Word doc. Well, it's an RTF when you download them, but save them as Word docs. Because RTF is the only way that they can put them up in the system, but RTFs don't work really when you start inputting into them. So always save them as a Word document when you work on them. The creative dossier will show what they're expecting for each type. So it could be a treatment, 20 minute or 20 page scene of dialogue. It could be a mood board, whatever it is that you want to sell your project, to talk about the worlds, the director's notes, the producer's notes. You can really put across the passion for the project, that we're going to make this no matter what. You can be in or you can be out, but you really should be in because it's a great project. They want to see that you are going to apply for this no matter what, or make this no matter what. This is a part that is, and the application. I mean, we'll talk about AI in a minute. Like, the more you do Jules, do you want to talk briefly about AI? Actually, I think it's a good time.
Yeah. So lots of people asking, can I, or being shush, but hush hush if they're actually using it. No, absolutely, you can use it. There are plenty of positives. There are obviously negatives there, to bear in mind. But there are plenty of positives in using it. So if you are using it, you may choose to use it or not. That's up to you. Some people have loads of ethical concerns and so on. But there are plenty of positives. But just a couple of brief, I mean, you could do several workshops on this, but just a few brief notes. So just one big thing is, if you don't want the world to see it, assume that they can. Even if it says you're in a private session, assume people can see it. So never, ever put anything into it that you don't want the entire world to see. So remove project names, people's names, any kind of private data. For example, earlier this year in July, there were some film examples that I'd seen that there was everything from pitch decks to creative writing, like script writing, that had been put publicly indexed on Google. So it was searchable, findable by anybody in the world. And it had been done through ChatGPT. Apparently they've pulled that part, the capability to index them, but after a lot of backlash on it. But things can and do go wrong with technology and things do get released. So if it's private, no matter how private or secure it says, just don't put in very, very private information. Then just bear in mind, just around bias, like let's say you're trying to get it to put up rough facts and figures for you, or pull up, ideas for you. It's heavily biased. Any bias that we have in the world, or unconscious bias that we have, it has the same thing. It's feeding in all the same. For example, there was one that went viral recently, and it asked it to, and there was a study done, released in July also this year, around its bias. And there was one just anecdotal one that somebody input saying, okay, what does this, I'm female, what should I put in this job negotiation? And it said 280. I am male, what should I put in for the exact same prompt? 400,000. So 120,000 in the difference if you were male or female. And even if you don't state, it might take a name and say, that's female. And they might guess gender, ethnicity, age, that sort of thing, and be heavily biased. So just remember its overall bias as well. And then just, again, this could be a whole workshop. So I'll just touch very, very briefly, just in terms of prompts that you feed into it. Be specific when you're doing it. For example, it's a DEI strategy. No, don't just say, just give me a DEI strategy for a film set in Ireland. Be very, very specific about some things that you might want in it. Go down a little bit more, again, anonymizing your own company. Do not put that in. But just be specific on the type of ones, and maybe some things that you're kind of going, we can't be maybe the cast, maybe it's Irish language, and so you're kind of going, we can't have much diversity in cast because we can have some diversity. There are some things we can, but we might be slightly more limited in casting. So how can we be more diverse? Put in those sort of prompts, and just talk back to it as well. Sometimes you can rearrange your prompts as well. I've had to tell. I've done it. I've used it, and I've had to tell it it's being a bit racist or it being a bit sexist and things like this, and putting it in, and it kind of goes, "Oh yeah, sorry, I was actually." it'll bring up something a bit more specific. Remember, it's not a Google search. So for example, ChatGPT currently, only the latest model of it has information up to 2024. So anything up to 2023, it might have it, but it doesn't have it. So, do research just in terms of publicly available information. If you're looking for things, get your ideas there. It can be very, very good though for prompts to get outside of your own head sometimes, no more than if somebody walks into the office and you say, "Oh God, here, just give me an idea here," and it prompts you, and maybe that's not the idea that you use, but it gets your mind jogging. So it's really, really good for that. I love to use it for things like that. The most important thing in AI, if you're using it, we get lots of applications. We've seen lots, obviously just with Creative Europe things, but for other things that we have, and other people that we're working with within the industry who see various applications in, whether it's for co-financing or pitching events or other sources of funding. They're saying they know the AI ones. They're very bland. They're very polite. They are accurate. They're very polite. They're respectful. They're safe. But there's nothing unique. That's what they're looking at. They're kind of going, there's nothing that kind of pops out. You're all storytellers. At the end of the day, you're all storytellers. You understand the art of storytelling. You know your story, or stories in the case of Slate. Don't forget that. You know you better than anything, better than AI ever can. So use it, kind of generate prompts to get you outside of your own head. It's very good for that. But always, always, never just copy and paste in the information. Always remember your story and make sure that your applications represent you as a company and the projects that you have.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks a million. Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. And I think even with the creative dossier, it might be tempting to,
Yeah.
do a give us a world there. Just give us an image that looks like, don't, it's icky. And you can tell. And at the, maybe in a year or two, you won't be able to tell at all. But at the moment you can. And the evaluator can read it and they can go, look, it's not authentic. They might know why exactly. They might be able to pinpoint it, but if it's not authentic, they're not going to fight for you. They're not going to want to give you points. They're not going to, it's just, I mean, obviously they have to in certain ways, but just be careful that, like Jules was saying, like your storytellers, so spend the time with it, be project specific. So, I think with Slate it's probably harder to fall into that trap than other calls, but yeah, but just be careful with it. I'm very conscious of time. So it's 20 to 12. I don't know how that happened. Thanks for still saying was. So we're just gonna fly through the rest. So the next thing we've got PDF with for the media database. You'll be downloading that again. That's a template. Proof of ownership of rights and rights of adaptation. You have to put them up. And then any supporting documents, any LOIs. Those LOIs are really important. If you're talking about, we've got a really good partnership with a sales agent or a distributor, and then you don't put in an LOI, they'll be like, oh, really? So if you have an LOIs and letters as opposed to emails as well, they prefer the independence of or the information on independence and ownership control. Breakdown of shareholding, again, that's an Excel. Don't put in your own documents here, right? When it says mandatory template, put in the mandatory template. And then the declaration of language. So you have to show what language the documents are in so they can have the right evaluators for the project. So yes, you'll be applying in English, but if your template is in Irish, they have to find an Irish writer or an Irish evaluator, or not an Irish evaluator. They can't find an Irish evaluator. They have to find an evaluator from another country who can speak it, right? So just be aware of that. This is what your page, I just took a screenshot there. This is what it'll look like. You will be very familiar with this page. And this is where you upload all your documents. Be careful not to upload the same one in two spots, which has happened quite a bit, I think. that you don't upload the wrong thing because your points then are gone or your eligibility is gone. So just be extra careful here. Over here, download Part B templates. That's where you find all the templates. It comes in as a folder. So just be aware of that. And so this is under the funding and tenders portal. If you Google funding and tenders portal and then you go to the funding proposals and you look for Slate, that's this, it'll bring you and you apply for that. But again, 2 weeks time, we'll go through all of that step by step. And then, okay, so it's going to be Part B, work packages, one per, again, we're not going to go through all this. Due dates of deliverables, it's there. If you're applying, you're going to be with us in 2 weeks time, so we'll talk about it then. The deliverables per work package, we were talking about deliverables before. So it's just about the update of what you're doing. So they don't want to see fifth draft of script. There might be a fifth draft of script. And if there isn't, then there's a deliverable there that you can't give. So what they've done is it's like it's updated, right? It's development, everything changes. So it's all updated documentation that they're looking for, right? Your update on the finance and production budgets, update distribution market strategy. So it's updating all the questions that you put in, all strategies that you put in. Then you need to have an ISAN or a EIDR, like that identifier number when this is after, like this is 36 months after, it's at the very end. And then there's a new one, which is just brought in this year, that they want an updated Declaration of Independence and European Ownership. So that document that you upload at the beginning, you have to upload an updated one at the end, because it has happened that companies change within those 3 years and companies aren't eligible anymore. So you just have to be careful. So they are looking for that updated one at the very end. So it's not just about getting the funding, sign the contract, and then you can go and sell your company to the highest bidder. It's like, it doesn't work like that. You have to be very careful that it's European the whole way along, right? And that's your company the whole way along. Errors, use the templates. Don't put in another format. If it asks you for PDF, you put it in as a PDF. Don't add in other types of documents that they haven't asked for. They don't want CVs. They don't want scripts. They don't want scripts because evaluators don't have time to read them. So if you want to put in a part, you can put in the first 20 pages, or you can put in a dialogue scene. But anyway, a treatment is much better because it gives you a much better sense of the whole project. So that's why you go for treatments and not scripts. Don't leave mandatory sections blank. No info is 0 points. Put the information in the correct section. And if you need to repeat in those questions, if you need to repeat, you can't just go, look, I've already talked about this up in question 2.1. No, say it again, because the evaluator is looking specifically at that question to give points for that. So if you have to repeat yourself, okay? There's a work package structure that we'll talk about, and make sure that the info is coherent with the rest of the documents in the application, and make sure that it's readable, that it's legible. Okay. And then don't forget to encode previous works and database. Again, we'll go through all that in 2 weeks. Encode the first day of principal photography correctly, even though the entire application says that you're going into production in February 27, and you accidentally put in 26 in the media database, it's ineligible. Okay, so just be really, really careful with that. I've seen it happen, so be extra careful with that. Yeah, the PDF generated from the media database, we'll talk about that next week. Don't forget to complete Part C in the language declaration, and then make sure to upload them in the right slot. And then if the mandatory documents aren't there, like if you put the same one up twice, it can be considered inadmissible. So be extra careful on that. And then if there's any questions at all, please, if you're applying, let us know, okay? Because we do have insight. We do have things that aren't necessarily in the call document that we can help you with. If you get stumped, we can help you. You can send us the application. You can send us, we get out the red pen. I don't have one here, but I do have many. And we get out the red pen and we go through the applications. We can't guarantee anything, but at least we can sort of steer you in the right direction. So, so please come to us, because, you might think, well, I've done this before. It's grand. We can do this. But we get nuggets of information from Brussels. We can get little extra. We're in touch with them every day. So please do get in contact with us and let us know if you're applying. And then we can start annoying you going, how are you getting that? You there yet? Right? We can be that poke on the shoulder, okay? If it's an IT related question, the help desk is brilliant. Don't leave it to the last minute to apply. Give yourself the last couple of days, send it in, and then you can update it. But at least there's a person in. If there's a problem, the IT desk is very helpful. They're very calm in Brussels in the IT desk, and they come back to you straight away. But just in case, just be very careful with that. And then these are our contact details, right? You can reach me at orla@creativeeuropeireland.eu. You can reach Jules at Jules's address there, Jules@creativeeuropeireland.eu. Generally what usually is I usually take this part of the country, and Jules will deal with the Irish language projects, and also the West of Ireland companies and the Gaeltacht companies, and all of there. Or you can come to either one of us, really. But generally that's how we split it. I think that's it. And we're way over time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop recording now. So for those of you watching